how do you want to build your system? Do you want to work with SQLs? Or do you want to really go with an object relational mapping style of programming logic? Okay. And if you're choosing an object relational mapping, some projects might say, we want to use a Hibernate directly. Some projects might say, no, let's use this. Okay. And this is more abstracted. This is even more abstracted than this. So there is still a choice. Okay. There are sometimes in projects where people will prefer to use Spring ORM compared to Spring Data JPA. Those cases have also happened because here more control will be there over Hibernate configuration. Here it is abstracted. The framework does a lot of things for you. So if simple, lightweight you want to build, don't get into complexity of Hibernate system, you can still use Spring Data JPA. Lightweight, fast, quick development. You don't need to get into too much deeper details. You will prefer to use a Spring Data JPA. If you want more control on how Hibernate is internally operating, you will have the option to use a Spring ORM. But slowly and steadily, in Spring-based applications, people are going to use these kind of frameworks rather than straight away operating Hibernate. But you never know. You get into some project and they say, no, we want to use Hibernate plain. So in that case, why to have this wrapper? You have to then understand Hibernate and work with that as well. Okay. So this is a kind of a database interaction model. Spring has given multiple frameworks for multiple purposes. Depending upon your need, you need to accordingly use the right modules and get started with it. Okay. So guys, that is what about OR mapping style. OR mapping style, database style. So we have two options, SQL style and ORM style, right? And then there are framework options available for making the work with it. So we have Spring JDBC, and we have Spring Data JDBC. For ORM, we have Spring ORM, and we have Spring Data JPA for working with more wrapper kind of, more faster development. A lot of auto-generated code will happen with Spring Data JPA. So this is how the team has achieved it. Okay, if you really now want to refer it with the documentation, Spring JDBC is available as part of the Spring framework itself. So if you go here to the Spring framework, you will realize somewhere here JDBC is available here as a framework itself. Okay, Spring JDBC is available as one of the module of the Spring framework itself. Spring Data JDBC is available here separately as part of a Spring Data project. Spring Data project is having a system for talking to multiple destinations. Okay, Spring Data JDBC, Spring Data JPA, Spring Data LDAP, Mongo. So Spring Data is providing a way to interact with that. It's a separate thing altogether. So yes, if required, you can explore through these options as well, how this is done, how it is providing, and what are the way of programming through this. Okay. You can check this thing out. Spring Data JDBC. This module deals with enhanced support for JDBC-based data access layers. Right? So they have further made it more robust, rock solid. And how it operates now, you have to learn their way of doing it. They have given some sample coding. Okay, so this is how you want to learn something about framework. You're not aware. Here it says now there are some samples. You click this, and there will be examples in GitHub. Oh, they are given some examples of how exactly to work with it. So the more you dig, the more now you go to ChatGPT, you will start getting more and more examples on how to use this. Just go through this basic, and everything is available one by one here. Okay, so like this, the community, whoever is building and enhancing and supporting, is giving more and more resources for other members to also learn it. Okay, fine. So chalo, that is what was regard to this kind of database layer, and JPA we spoke about, so is also available here. You can check this out. Even overview, sample code is there, and how to work with this. A lot of details, references you will find. So guys, it boils down to this. Those who are more interested to know Those who are more curious to know, they will sit, they will explore, they will gain the knowledge, and in interview when they go, they will be more extraordinary. So information is all there. It's all available with examples, but patience to sit and learn should be there. Okay, guys, are we clear? Give a quick thumbs up. Are we clear so far? Give a quick thumbs up, guys. Are we clear so far? Okay. And fine, you're born after a long time of IT industry. So it is like 30 years old industry, guys. 30 years old industry. New and new things will always keep happening. And you are like, oh, kya ho gaya duniya mein batao? Yeah, this is what it is. What happened in this world? Now I'm born maybe 20 years ago. Tell me what's going on in this world. These things are going on in this world. Okay, no problem. And things will change. Things will change in future. Your next generation will see further more softwares, more enhancement. It's a journey. That's what is IT. Okay, very good, very good, very good. Okay. Now, let's speak about the last area, which is pretty straightforward, just enterprise application. So once we are done with the database, the last one then boils down to enterprise. And let's simply speaking about it, enterprise means any enterprise application means big complex systems with whatever logics you want, you can build using Spring Framework. Enterprise level applications means where there is complexity, where there is a lot of security and multiple services, multiple components, synchronous communication, asynchronous communication, different database types, and full-on complex enterprise scale. So if you want to build a system which will grow so much drastically, where you cannot predict what use cases will come, blindly you should stick with Spring, because Spring is going to give you one or the other option to do all those activities. So in the market, okay, other than Spring, there is no other framework in the Java which people can blindly trust for building enterprise level applications. Okay, for example, if you go to this roadmap.sh, on the week 1, we spoke about this, right? Roadmap.sh. Let's go to Java here, Java, and we are clicking on this Java. If you choose this part, web frameworks, you can see there are other kind of frameworks also. Play framework is there. So Spring and Spring Boot, we will touch now Spring Boot related part. But first understand the power of Spring here. Okay, we have Spring and Spring Boot. But in the market, other players are also there. Play framework, Spark, Quarkus. Okay, and even if you go further to the ORM, object relational mapping style, what it is saying, Spring Data JPA belongs into that category. Okay, and then Hibernate option is available. eBean option is there. Enterprise Bean option is also available. Working with JDBC, you have the JDBC template. Nothing but it is part of Spring JDBC modules itself. But the point here is there are other alternate options there for doing these things. But when it comes to building an enterprise application, so enterprise application means anything can happen there. Okay, you can work with any databases, you can work with any requirements, and for them, the only possible option is to go with Spring. Because using Spring, if you really check it out here itself, Spring is saying, Spring is everywhere. Spring is flexible, it is productive, it is fast, it is secure, it is supportive. And using Spring, you can build any kind of applications, batch processing applications, event-driven, serverless, web app, cloud, reactive, web, microservice, and anything which might come in future. For them, Spring has given one or the other project. So you can imagine the vastness of this. You can imagine, you can do n number of projects and they are continuously, the support is enhancing the framework so drastically. So that is where, when it comes to enterprise level, even though market might have some other options, but why to do something of this, something of this, something of this? Let's go to the main player. Spring is that main player. Spring is having all the options for entire applications. That's the beauty and the power of Spring. Okay. And that is where Spring is so popular and in so common terms. So still, Spring Boot has done a great bit of part, but you need to understand the power of Spring first of all. Spring is the ultimate power. Spring Boot is one of the project of Spring. But the main framework which is dominating and ruling is Spring Framework itself. The Spring community itself is amazing. You can see all of that here. Okay. But then why is so much of hype in the market about Spring Boot? Let's discuss about this part. And yes, project development is happening in Spring Boot style itself. So guys, what is Spring Boot? Okay, Spring Boot is nothing but, it's very simple term, guys. It is a project created in Spring ecosystem, whose primary aim is for rapid application development. Means faster things should happen. Developers' life should become so much easy. That is the aim of Spring Boot, and it succeeded in that. So the idea of Spring Boot was that we want developer life should be very much peaceful. We want the framework to do things very quickly, very fast. Developers should focus only on functionality, and life of developers should be peaceful. Versioning, management, dependencies, we will take care of everything. That was the basic plan of Spring Boot system. Developer ka life should be easy. Full complexity should be taken by the framework itself. This was the idea for building a Spring Boot application. And guys, they succeeded in that. When Spring Boot came in the market with its all principles, developer life should be simple, the framework will take care of much more complexity for you. We will try that everything should be done automatically, intelligently. You don't have to think too much. We will take care, kind of with auto intelligence. That is where Spring Boot started dominating in the market. With Spring, the traditional Spring system which was there, everything you have to configure. Okay, this framework work like this, like this, like this. A lot of configurations were there. With Spring Boot, those configurations were replaced with sensible default values. So still, for running the framework, you need to do a lot of things. But in Spring Boot style, the Spring Boot is doing it. We are not doing it. So developer is not like involving in so much of complex configuration. You focus on only your lightweight, simple, functional logic. A lot of things will happen automatically for you if you use Spring Boot, and people started enjoying that in the industry like anything. So the main aim of Spring Boot is rapid application development. How it provides that rapid application development is by sensible defaults. Means developer don't have to configure anything. System will assume and run behalf of you. That was so amazing. Sensible defaults for lot of configurations. This was one powerful thing which these guys provided. Apart from that, simplified and powerful dependency management. Nothing but how the jars and the versioning, all that should happen. Simplified. How did it simplify? Using this concept of starters. They introduced something called as starters. Using starters, dependency management and everything, they started taking care very nicely in Spring Boot. So sensible default started coming it. Starter configuration started coming it. They removed all the unnecessary. Previously, a lot of dependency was on the XML related stuff. They removed all that. They said, keep things simple. Just use Java annotations. Work with annotations. Life will be simple. Why do you want so much of XML maintenance and all that? They simplified that completely. Focus on this. Okay, they provided inbuilt support. Right now, you're not aware of it, but we will speak about it. Inbuilt support for application context container. Inbuilt support for that was provided. Okay, they provided another very important and interesting feature called as auto configuration. Means developer, you don't configure, we will configure for you. Lot of intelligence was added with Spring Boot, and the developer community started enjoying and said, whoa, that's magic. We don't have to do all this thing. It will happen by itself. Framework is taking care. The market went crazy when Spring Boot was launched in the beginning days. It was so interesting. We don't have to do it. It will happen. Earlier, people used to think using Spring itself is a blessing for us. Okay, we don't have to do that. They tuned it so nicely. On top of Spring, all of this mess they removed and made it so lightweight for developer. Developers are like, now it is wow. We do only few annotations and work happens automatically. That's wonderful. So it was received with amazing enthusiasm by the entire Java community, Spring Boot, and it started being widely adopted. And if you see this, you will see more and more weightage here is coming by Spring Boot style. And do the programming or project development using Spring Boot style, Spring Boot style, Spring Boot style. And yes, it is built on top of the core framework of Spring itself. So Spring Boot is nothing, something like very out of the blue. They took the core Spring framework and made some modifications on top of that to give you a better, faster feel. So that is where Spring Boot is built on top of the Spring core system itself. But it is really very powerful and developers enjoyed it like anything. And now comes the interesting part about Spring Boot. Spring Boot is a style of programming. Using Spring Boot means using certain annotations, certain configurations. And if you use it in that particular and certain configurations in maybe starters form and other things, Spring Boot, they created in such a manner that if in your application you provide the support for Spring Boot, you will be able to create all these other kind of applications also. So Spring Boot is not an independent one simple project. Spring Boot is powerful and popular because you can do Spring Boot style of programming on Spring Data JPA. You can do Spring Boot style of configuration in Spring Security, in Spring Session, in Spring whatever other modules. In Spring JDBC, you can apply Spring Boot style of programming. So the framework, this Spring Boot became so popular, simple reason because any other kind of application that you want to develop, there is a faster support given by Spring Boot. And you can imagine now developers can build whatever they want, that too so fast. So it just adapted in the market. And now blindly people are saying every new project start with Spring Boot based application. Now, whatever that project could be, whether it is whatever nature, but it has to be a Spring Boot based configuration. So that is where the world is crazy about Spring Boot right now. So it is a project in the Spring ecosystem, which is built on top of Spring, built on top of core Spring, whatever is the core mechanisms of Spring, on top of that it is built. And using Spring Boot, you can develop any other applications also. These were some powerful things provided. Okay, and now just have a look here. Using Spring Boot, we can do all this. If we click the Spring Boot now separately, they will speak about these powerful features with regards to Spring Boot application. Using this, yes, you can create standalone application also, web application also, any kind of application. Okay, next, along with Spring Boot, it provides some embedded servers. Earlier, you needed to explicitly manage your server, manage your deployments. With Spring Boot, they made the life simple. Okay, we are not even cared about server. Without knowing server, you are running it. Earlier, when we were starting our IT careers, we needed to learn this Tomcat separately, how it maintenance happens, how its session is taken care. We understood, we learned how these servers were also operating inside, how the jar file works, how the war file works, how the abstraction. Too much of chaos was there when I started my IT career. Too much of the server learning was also part of the learning curve. But right now, we are working with application and such a big thing. Servers are big, complex softwares. You don't even know that. Why you don't know that? Because the framework has abstracted it from you. You just know embedded Tomcat. Kya karta hai? We don't know port occupy. So framework is simplifying the life. Try to understand that. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I was learning, it was complex. It was big. It was like, oh, you need to start this, you need to start this. And if the server is not properly undeployed, then a problem, then killing the server, restarting. Too much of chaos was there. And server maintenance, memory and all, too much. Now just gone. Simple concept of embedded Tomcat. We will take care of these things internally for you. You don't worry. Simple. Okay, provide opinionated starter dependency to simplify your build configuration. Starter configuration. Whatever the project might be needing, it gives you that. Opinionated, it means Spring has its own opinion. Spring says, if you want to work, for example, yesterday example itself, guys, Spring is saying, you want to work with web, you will definitely need some JSON conversion. It gave you that. Spring is saying, you want to work with web, you would definitely need some Tomcat. Spring gave Apache Tomcat directly as the default container to you. These are opinions. You ask Spring, give me X. Spring says, oh, you are now asking X. After 2 days, you will ask me Y also. Let me give you X and Y straight away. What is happening? Your time is being saved. And Spring Boot is then has studied the entire world, so many projects, and they have now smart decision making. Generally, whenever people are creating a database kind of application, what all dependencies they will need, they group them together. For making web application, what all generally they will need, they group them together. And guys, 80% of the applications will need only that. If you want something else, you can easily add it. So it's not the end of the world. So what is happening, guys? Simplicity is there. Dependency management simplified, opinionated. Okay, Spring Boot is nothing but it is having opinionated starter dependencies for you. Whatever you might need, it gives you that. Okay, next, automatic configuration. Lot of things, auto configuration feature. We will see this thing practically as we go, maybe tomorrow session itself. Okay, auto configuration. Next, some production ready metrics. For example, if you're simply using Spring Boot, you will be able to see like Spring statistics, how much memory is occupied, how many threads are being there. So Spring provides a mechanism to give you internal health and metrics kind of things inbuilt. No need to do something very wonderful for that. It will just do it for you. So this is very much required. And guys, no need of any XML configuration, no requirement for XML, absolutely no code generation. You focus on your stuff. So these were, you might feel, okay, is it really that powerful? But guys, you need to understand the world which was there before Spring Boot, life was painful. Even though frameworks were so popular, but too much of configurations and drama and maintenance was there. When Spring came, everything was a magic. Wow, how can the framework take care of all these things? And that is where the world was amazed with it. And it adapted. And using Spring Boot, you can build all other type of framework or other type of applications. So it just picked up in the market like anything. And nowadays, Spring Boot term is more popular than even the Spring term. Boot application, because it just goes fast. That's amazing, right? Okay. So this is where, guys, Spring Boot started hugely being adopted. These are some of the things to know the precise features. This is the link of Spring project. Let's just look at one thing before we jump into the next conversation, guys. Again, Spring Boot is nothing but it's an open source project available in GitHub, right? We already launched GitHub here. Spring framework we saw, and this is the main location, right? Spring projects. If you see, Spring Boot is another project, open source project available in GitHub as part of Spring community itself. You can scroll through there. It's such a simple project. It's not having, you can imagine Spring framework is having so many modules, right? So many. Framework hai bhai. Too many modules. You look at Spring Boot, it's few things. Few modules, light code, but very powerful. This is what Spring Boot is. And if you really observe here, in the Spring Boot system, let's go inside Spring Boot project. You can see here, they have given multiple projects for a lot of activities. Auto configure, actuator, this was health metrics, auto configure, dependency management, some DevOps related tools. So internally they enhance it like anything. Okay. And one of the, where is it? Project starter. This is interesting, guys. Have a look at the starter. We are talking about starter right from the beginning, right? This is a starter project. Just observe internally how it does. We are very happy. Okay, we launch our own project and we say add a starter dependency. Let's say, okay, I'm launching IDE. But just trying to know the framework a bit better, okay, how they are doing what they are saying they want to do. Okay, let's give a minute. Once we see the last demonstration, then we will go to the next topic. Okay, let it come up. Meanwhile, we will open the pom.xml. Okay. Okay, guys. Just see here. Simply, we are saying in our dependency, we want to add a starter dependency. Spring Boot, starter, web. Spring Boot, okay. DevTool dependency. We went to Google, right? From Google, we went to Maven and got the DevTool dependency. Because of the DevTool dependency, automatically our server is starting every time we do a save. What is all this? Projects. If you really go down here in the Spring related flow, you will be able to realize Spring Boot DevTool is configured as a project inside the Spring Boot community itself. So when you add this, it goes DevTool, it goes to the Spring Boot system, and then from this place, it takes the code which is making it, okay, whenever some save happens, automatically take care of it. So if you're interested how it works, this is the right place to go for. Okay, another thing, guys, we are talking about there is a project like starter project. And we have added the starter, Spring Boot starter web. If you can check this thing out, just see, there are starters created for all this in the same starter project. You can check this thing out. Okay. There is Spring Boot starter web, which we added. This is going to take care of both. We spoke about this today itself. Using this, you can make MVC based applications and even REST API based applications. Okay. Another one, if you want to make reactive applications, then WebFlask starter is available. Socket programming you want to do, WebSocket is available. Oh, web services SOAP based you want to do, that is available. And just imagine, there is so many starters for different types of projects. That is where Spring Boot is powerful. You want to connect to MongoDB in a reactive manner, LDAP, JPA, Redis, REST, okay, GraphQL, all are different types of project. Spring Boot is so popular because it takes care of all these other projects which are there. You can see Cassandra, Couchbase, Elasticsearch, JDBC, JPA, LDAP, Cache, Batch. It's a big framework. ActiveMQ, actuators, which takes care of a lot of other projects for you. And they will continue to keep enhancing the support to even take care of projects which come in future as well. Okay, very good. If you now click on this Spring Boot starter web, we added in our pom.xml Spring Boot starter web. Somewhere there is a ready-made project available for this Spring Boot starter web. If you open that, internally that starter is loading these many other dependencies for you. And if you really observe, it is internally loading Spring Web module, Spring Web MVC module, which gives you the capability of MVC related, of REST related activities. It is giving you Tomcat related module. It is giving you Tomcat, embedded Tomcat is coming, right? It is giving you JSON capability based module. And regular whatever Spring Boot starter might be there. So nothing but if you are simply saying web, you get Tomcat, you get JSON capability, you get the power of web and MVC both. And this is the description. Starter for building web, including RESTful applications using web MVC, uses Tomcat as the default embedded container. And if you can connect with this statement is nothing but what we see on Spring Boot initializer. Build web, including RESTful applications using Spring MVC, right? So somehow that is a description statement which is visible to us there as well. So starter is the place where all of this magic happens. Now, if you want to get into more details, these are the modules, Spring Web and Spring MV, this one is the modules which are defined inside the Spring framework. org.spring framework, inside that this is a module, Spring Web module. So you can go here and then there is going to be a Spring Web module here. And then you can open this up. And inside that there will be further more configuration. Okay, what is a web module depending upon? And it is dependent upon so much more. You can imagine, will a developer, and let's assume a fresher, will they really know this much of complexity? Not possible. So the framework is taking care of so much things for you. Okay, developer goes and you're like, okay, this annotation I will use and work is happening. But you can imagine how much vast the ocean of knowledge